stereotype in a way of the total place at the prison. That's part of, I think, the argument about new money, preventive work always needing new money. One of the goals of total place or of equivalence, integration of services, is so that we have a sensible approach to budget setting. That where currently incentives for people to save money are not there if the money saved goes to some other service. And Steve Bullock was describing this actually in Lewisham, I think quite effectively, i.e. how all of the services would gain from saving and operating more effectively. It does occur to me, and this is a question to yourselves, whether there are examples of good practice. If it's done this way in X, then why isn't it done that way in Z, P, Q, and everywhere else? And I think the promotion of good practice is a really important issue. People get into sort of mindsets, it has to be done this way, but if someone else is doing it another way, then, well, why don't we at least think about it? So I think that is going to be one of the ways forward. As far as Charlie's point just on ex-prisoners in schools, I mean, I think that's the issue of people understanding what the society's institutions are and learning about them early on. I think this is extremely important, and both for the children of prisoners who are in schools, so they aren't stigmatized, but also for other people understanding the society that they're growing up in. So how you do that under the current circumstances, I'm not sure, but I think it's certainly something that's worth pursuing.
Tom, I wonder if you might also repeat a point I heard you make on Monday, because I know lots of us in the sector, we sort of seize on even the tiniest bits of evidence that can be found that Merriam's quoted and you quoted about the effectiveness of education, and therefore want to say to the government, if you will spend to save, then in the long term the economy will be better off because we'll reduce reoffending. But you told us about quite a useful little bit of conversation you had with David Willis, and I wonder, I mean, it just illustrates the height of the challenge. It's not good news, but it is real news.
No, it is, well, yes. David Willis, who's now Secretary of State for a minute, anyway, he's responsible for universities and science. But we went to see him as part of the inquiry. I've convinced him twice. And he has actually experience as an ex-Treasury Minister. But he also is, I should say but, he also is someone who, I think, quite genuinely looks at evidence, whatever you think political position, he looks at evidence and is keen to gather evidence. And so we were making more or less the case without the detail that we had, because it was early days in the inquiry, about the value of investing in learning across a whole range of areas, including defendants. And he said, well, yeah, but the problem is the Treasury gets so many bids of what's called spend to save, i.e. invest now to reduce costs later, that we can spend the entire national budget on spending to save without actually delivering any of the current services. And he said that the Treasury, generally speaking, if you can't demonstrate that there's a payback period of maximum 2 years, the Treasury will not be interested in this at all. So there is a challenge there as well. Nevertheless, I think the more we can build up the evidence on whatever timescale, the better it's going to be.
Thank
more
you.
chance.
So, some more voices. Anybody else want to comment? Can we go over to this side of the room? Is there one or two others who want to speak as well? And then Katie.
Hi, Wayne Burry from HMP Channings Wood. I pick up on some of the tracks we've had already. Firstly, in the Holes role. Sadly, the Holes have gone into that hole of training that exists in the prison service for non-operational staff. And having been there since the start, there's been very little. Angela's now got a work party who are looking at how this can be improved, and I'm pretty confident that from that there will be positive moves for the halls and for developing the role of halls with the specialism they have, learning and skills and moving forward. And let's not lose sight, there is so much good work going on out there. In terms of family work and what have you, I can use Channing's Wood, Dartmoor as examples. We have a lot of work going into family-centred visits and child-centred visits, where the men are interacting with the children, and there's involvement from a whole range of partner organisations to facilitate that, to try to break down this barrier of the cut-off of incarceration. On the wider issue of partnerships, I think we're fortunate in the sense that we can celebrate the partnership. Those of you who've seen the Chelsea Flower Show this week, the Garden from Eden project, working with a whole range of offenders and individuals in the community with additional needs, is a terrific celebration, and they got their silver medal for that. We're fortunate we work with the Eden project in a number of ways. There's something called the Ockham Farm project in South Devon, which is a partnership between Eden, between probation, working now with prisons for men coming through the gate, Rockall and preparation. So these sorts of things are out there. And why I'm saying this is because we're trying to have a thread of learning and skills and education right throughout that. It's about the emphasis. The 4 key points that you've highlighted, the finance, the health, etc., are core to this. But it's also about engaging and taking up the 80-20 split. In the Southwest, we have a different process where we have 3 providers, or 2 for the learning and skills, and there's a debate about whether one has the 20, one has the 80, and it's getting this understanding that the 20 goes throughout. But let's not lose sight, there is a lot of positive work. We have a lot of hills to climb, but there is the enthusiasm out there.
Great, great. Over the corner.
Joe Bacon, Open Book Project, Councillor Sam Book Project. And given the constraints of OLS contracts, how do we ensure that our provision genuinely caters for the needs and the academic potential of our students, as opposed to the tick box culture dictated by sort of government targets?
Good question. And one more, just in the middle there, and then again, Tom as well.
Yeah, Paul Wright, Pentonville. Couple of points. I think we need to think about as much education, as much sitting alongside education, we need to think about the cognitive package that our guys are working with. It's no good educating them to read and write if when they walk back outside they haven't got the social skills to actually put them into place. I think our social package has to really be improved, and also what does the panel think about the idea of specialisation in NICs? Because every prison is trying to do a little bit, be everything to every man. How about prisons that actually specialise in one thing? And I think I'll answer that for you. The prison service can't cope with it.
Okay, thanks. Some of these things will continue in the workshops, but let's have an initial response.
Can I come to the wrong way round? Because I've just got to your specialisation. I think it actually was considered at one point that we could have specialist areas. And I think it has, you're quite right, realistically, if it's difficult to keep people on a course in one prison, to actually move them to a specialist prison is perhaps being, however optimistic I am, perhaps a bit beyond the pale there. But I do think the new core curriculum that both the Prison Service and the Skills Funding Agency have agreed to, where we will have a seamless progression for offenders, I think you will find that they can move through the system and can continue their courses with an accrediting body, that they don't have to start again and do it all again, which we've had in the past.